me bring down that saucy music. Hello and welcome to the Lehigh Valley with Love podcast. We're going live tonight. I'm your host, George Wacker. We've got quite the group. I hope you guys are excited. I am. As we talk about the upcoming Lehigh Valley Book Festival taking place on Saturday, March 26th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Bethlehem Area Public Library. In fact, you can see it right there on your screen. Tonight, we have, and I'm going to bring these people in one by one as we go. Kirsten Hess, owner of Let's Play Books in Easton and founder or part of the Lehigh Valley Book Festival. Josh Berk, executive director, Bethlehem Area Public Library. Paul Akampora, who writes novels and short stories for young readers. Gina Lovelace, who is the author of the Diary of Fifth Grade Outlaw series and pens profiles and pieces on mental health for Men's Health. And Jordan Sonnenbleck. Jordan now spends much of the year visiting schools around the country and the world, conducting writing workshops and sharing his love for the written word. And he's also a pirate, I just learned. So we're going to get more into that. Let me get this out of here. I want to thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight to talk about the Lehigh Valley Book Festival. This is a lot of fun. And it's a beautiful day. I got my windows open. So thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Love it.
So, Kirsten, I want to start with you because we are talking about the Lehigh Valley Book Festival that's taking place on March 26th. We haven't had a lot of events in the last 2 years, and I know that March 2020 was when you kind of got the news that that festival wasn't taking place. Can you talk about, just from the beginning, where did the Lehigh Valley Book Festival idea come from, and then talk about the last 2 years?
Oh, so much, right? Yeah, the Lehigh Valley Book Festival, the inaugural festival was supposed to be in March of 2020, the last weekend. Josh Berk and I had booked out the last weekend in March for 5 years in a row. It just sounded so great. And then 2 weeks before, we had to say, no, thank you, no more events. And that was a 3-day event. We had Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We had events at PBS and Arts Quest, and we had, of course, at the library, but also places like in Emmaus and Allentown. So it was like going to be everywhere, and it was really going to be awesome. But that's okay, because we're here, we're safe, we're healthy, and we had a good time rolling with the punches. And the festival itself was just kind of a brainchild of pretty much everybody on the stage here. I mean, every author knows all sorts of things about festivals. My background's in major event planning. And so ever since I opened a store in Emmaus, I've wanted to do this. And I never had the ability to do it until I had a partner in crime, which is Josh Berk. Because without the Bethlehem Public Library, we wouldn't have kind of a home base. And that is like the most beautiful library, and it's awesome.
And really how does it feel? And even Josh, you can talk about it. How does it feel to have a live event again? You know, with that energy where you don't have to take as many precautions as maybe in the last couple of years. How does that feel to have it back on campus?
Oh, it's great. We're excited. We have been doing a lot of renovations at the library since I've been there, and we finished our big meeting room, which is the Cohen room, named for our old friend Bob Cohen. Look, here's my dog. And then the Cohen room opened like which is a big multi-purpose meeting room with like just all about having large events. We had one event there with Kirsten, or two maybe small events, and then it was March, and then but it's been my intention since we started renovating to make a real committed effort to the library as a venue, like as a place where we can have big events and parties and concerts and author signings. Of course, we want to be like the center of the literary world as best we can in the Valley. And so, and Kirsten throws a great event. Her store, like, it always looks awesome. Whenever she has authors in, like, it's just the best place to visit. And so we thought we could do that on a big scale. We have the space and she has the smarts. So, and I know a lot of authors that there are some incredibly talented authors in the Lehigh Valley. You almost can't believe how many of these folks are known nationally and internationally. who all just live like around the corner, and it's kind of unbelievable.
Some below us right
Some
now.
of them are right here. Some of them are literally.
Let's bring them into the conversation. To anybody, any of the authors here, how does it feel for you to be a part of a in-person, thing again?
I'm the most excited about that because I feel like most authors aren't this way, but I'm a very extroverted person. And so the introverted nature of being a writer, just having to sit in a room, for me, it has to be a quiet room, an incredibly quiet room to get writing done, is the hard part of the job. And then the part that I love is like meeting kids specifically for my books and like getting a chance to actually talk to them in person and hear what they have to say, see their energy and their excitement on their faces. Like that was fun with Zoom, but it definitely wasn't the same as doing an in-person event. And I'm so excited to be able to start to do that again. So.
Yeah, I would say, I think the thing I really missed, and this sounds trivial, but it's not, is like the goofy little interactions you have with kids, like right before an assembly or right after an assembly, or, a kid stops you in the hallway to say, my friend cried reading your book, and he thinks he's big and macho, but he cried reading your book. And, like these little moments, and Zoom is the best we could do with what we had. But, I think it's true, sort of what Gina said, like, I pictured when you said the thing about writing in a quiet place, like you're sitting in like this, the clean room at NASA or something, right? It's all white and there's like vacuums everywhere sucking the stuff out of the air, and you're in this like vacuum chamber. That's what it's like when you're doing the writing part of writing. And I think a lot of us are kind of like bursting at the bit to burst out of that. Once we've written a book, it's like, okay, I wrote this, and we're like puppy dogs that like waiting at the door to be let out. We're like, okay, now I wrote a book, now I get to go play. And there was nowhere to play, right? So I am thrilled because I am a complete spastic 12-year-old. And so I'm thrilled to be back.
And Paul, do you feel the same way?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I just did my first school visit this past week in a long, long time. And equally exciting, Kirsten hosted a book launch for my new book this week in Emmaus, at the store in Emmaus. And a little girl came up afterwards and she said, can I give you a hug? And,
yeah, wait, yes.
So that's just not possible unless you're actually present. And so this has been just a great joy to be back in the world and back with at the bookstore at Let's Play Books, back in the libraries, back in the classrooms, because Gina's right. You have to spend a lot of time by yourself to make these things, and you want to share them.
Yeah.
And how, to the authors again, how was maybe your creativity? Was it any different during that time period? It seems like you had just said it's good to be in that hermetically sealed room, right? But maybe if you're in there for too long, it might not be a good thing. So how is that for your creativity over those last 2 years?
Yeah. Go ahead, Jordan.
No, go ahead, Gina. Go.
Okay. At first, for me, it was like, ooh, now I have only time to create, and like, okay, this is going to be fantastic. Like, I don't have the busyness of seeing people to get in the way of being able to get stuff done. Because for me, especially, like I get on I start to go, and then I just keep going, and I can just like get a lot done. And then about month 4 or 5 hit, and it started all petering out for me, like personally, like all the work that I had been like rushing to get done was suddenly all gone. And I mean, I'm always like, about 4 or 5 projects on the back burner at one time. And I still was like out of things to do. And I really suffered personally. Like my mental health dove to a really bad place. But at the same time, like that, I don't know, I guess the writer in me was like, this is an opportunity to turn this into a book. And so like, I ended up like later, I started going on walks more purposefully with my dog, and started journaling about those walks. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, well, this could actually be something that a lot of people could relate to, is the isolation that was happening during this time, and then how little things that started to open back up, but at the same time, little things in your own life that you could like attach yourself to, like Zoom calls, became something that was like a weekly thing for me. And I started doing something that I never did before because I am the type that needed it quiet and nothing to write. I started doing writing sprints with friends over Zoom, where we both show up and we both mute at the same time. And then we, like, if it's 7:00, we'll hit back at 7:20, and then we'll talk about what we just wrote and stuff like that. And then we'll get back to it. And I would have never done that if it weren't for the isolation of COVID and stuff.
I never would have done this without, the isolation. Can you, Jordan or Paul, can you talk to some of that as well?
Yeah, go ahead, Jordan.
Oh, okay. So absolutely, like, I had a really interesting beginning of COVID. Because the outbreak started in America in Boston at a biotech conference, and my daughter goes to college in Boston, and her roommate's dad was a panelist at that conference, and so he was a great biotechnology innovator in getting COVID very early on and giving it to his daughter, who gave it to my daughter's other roommate, and then I picked my daughter up, and we knew that it was like, we didn't know that they had COVID, but we knew that they had some weird coughing disease for like 7 days. And this was before anyone knew that like singing is the worst thing you could possibly do if you're in a small space with COVID. Right. So my daughter and I drove her home from Boston, and we sang, along with the radio for 6 hours straight, singing harmonies. And then 5 days later, she woke up with a fever. 10 days later, I woke up with a fever, lost my sense of smell. It's still all messed up. And then I slept the entire month of April of 2020. And then I woke up in the beginning of May, and I was like, holy crap, I owe my editor a book. And so I said, what am I going to write about? No one knows how to write about COVID. And I think this is something that authors have been talking about. No one knows how to write about this COVID time. Like, I couldn't predict forward in 2020 how it was going to end, what it was going to look like. What do I write about? How do I write about the present? So fortunately, the book I had written just before that, that hadn't come out yet, was a memoir of my own fourth grade year, which clearly was way before COVID, right? So then I sat down, and in a month, I wrote the sequel, which was coming out in June, The Boy Who Fell Dodgeball. And it's a memoir of the past. So I was very lucky. It allowed me to avoid all the, like, how do you write about COVID when no one knows how it's going to end? So in a way, I was very unlucky because, like, it would have been nice to still have a sense of smell. But
do you not have that back? You don't have that back yet?
I have like a weird mutated sense of smell now. So I'll smell like terrible smells that aren't there. And then I'll have to be with my wife, like, is there something terrible? Or the opposite, like something will literally be on fire in my kitchen when I'm cooking. And, my early on, my daughter came running downstairs and she was like, Dad, something's on fire. And I was like, oh, wow, it's good that someone told me that because I can't smell it. I was like, oh, yeah, that's weird. There's smoke everywhere. That's a good clue. But yeah, so, I mean, compared to what a lot of other people have gone through, that part wasn't, we've lost family members and stuff like that, which was obviously much more serious. But the big thing was figuring out, like, how do you approach this new reality? And I haven't even done that yet because I'm just writing memoirs because it's a struggle figuring out how to approach this.
I mean, you have to digest this too. And hopefully we're kind of at this end period. I mean, it's still always going to be around, but we haven't really had time to digest that period. Kirsten and Josh, can you talk to maybe your interaction with authors as well during this time period? I'm not sure exactly how you work in that space, but was it different for you? Did you encounter different things?
Oh, extremely so. The whole publishing industry didn't know what to do because they had all of these authors that have written books and no way to get them into the hands of people, because the reality is that a lot of people don't buy books necessarily at independent bookstores or even Barnes & Noble. They'll buy them on like Amazon, but they see and hear about them word of mouth from librarians, libraries, teachers, bookstore owners. And there was none of that anymore. And so all of a sudden the whole industry said, what are we going to do? And that's one of the reasons why, like, this festival, even though it's 2022, it's trying to incorporate books and authors that had what they call front list books in 2021, because it really didn't get the attention. 2020 didn't get the attention. 2021 didn't get the attention. We held a book festival online, but it was 6 weeks long, and we did 4 programs a week. And
let's be honest, like, even this, it's great, but you really can't replace that feeling of being, especially with children. I would imagine for the author, like, to have to have children around you who are appreciating your work, that's half the reason you do it, and
Actually, can I say one thing about that? Because it's really particular that just last week we had the book launch for Paul's book. This is in honor of Broken.
Keep holding that up.
Isn't that pretty? I love this cover, and he has a great story to tell about the cover. But I described this book as a big hug, and that we all kind of needed this right now. And I won't go into specifics, but a family that is dealing with a tragedy that is almost all of us already have heard about it in the Lehigh Valley. It's about as bad as it can be. The family came to this event, and this book deals with grief and loss. And this little girl is reading this book now with her mother. And that connection, that 5-minute hug and that conversation that Paul had with her on our 2 little chairs all by themselves, it was the cutest thing ever. You cannot replace that. That is immeasurable.
Yeah, that was a great gift for me. It was just a beautiful evening. And but I think there's a whole bunch that Kirsten's not saying about the work that she's been doing on behalf of our entire community as a bookstore, as a small business owner, as a citizen. Like, you just doubled and tripled and quadrupled down on making your business successful, but just delivering to people's, that crazy system that you put together to deliver books nonstop, a 6-week book festival, because you didn't have anything else to do, and then bringing people in from all over the country, and this way of connecting people in a time that I think what you did was just vital to being a community. And that's why the independent bookstores matter. And that was happening all over the country. It wasn't just you, but we were just blessed that you're here, that we could benefit from that. And then as an author that can be plugged into somebody or a community with an anchor like the library and the bookstore, you're like, oh my goodness. So when people ask me, do you ever work with your independent books, your bookseller? I'm like, I survive because of my independent books. Like, I really consider what you do, like you're like a partner in the making of books. And that was something that I didn't understand when I first started this. I thought, I would go into some writer's loft somewhere and the world would quiet down while I put beautiful words on a paper. It's not like that. It's sort of like, I don't know what it's like. It's like getting chased by thieves. I don't know what it's like. There's no, I'm just getting chased. I always feel like I'm just getting chased.
I feel like I'm not getting chased enough.
So yeah, and then Kirsten throws me a life preserver, like grab on, and so yeah, the partnership that and the support that the independent bookstores, especially ours, like Kirsten, is instrumental in why so many authors are in the Lehigh Valley, I think.
And that's something that's amazing to me, because when you think author, right? When we read books with my daughter, maybe I'm thinking abstractly, like they live in New York City, I don't know, right? Mm-hmm. But you don't. You are here. You work with the library and the bookstore, like Let's Play Books. Josh, can you talk a little bit about the importance of the library in that chain as well, is having independent local authors and providing a space? I know that you've been doing a lot of fun stuff. I can't wait to get into your studio where you were, jamming with a band before all this started. There's a lot of exciting things happening in the library.
Yeah, we make a lot of music in the basement of the library, and we did do a lot of cool virtual stuff. Like, we had some staff really jumped in with both feet and trying to make that work. There's actually, it's just kind of interesting. There's a big study being done about how, for kids, it's interesting if you're a nerd, about how virtual story time compares with literacy benefits to in-person story times. So I don't know the outcomes yet, but they reach out to us as part of this study group. So it's interesting to see. But I was gonna say the virtual festival last year was cool. It was fun. And there were authors that we couldn't have connected with. Some of them were local. Gina was there, launch. But we also had speakers from like all over, and people we couldn't have had otherwise. And so I had some people, reach out to me and say how much they appreciated that and how much they felt like the library sort of connected them, like what Paul was saying, the bookstore does, to a larger community. And I think that was all great. But I'm also like, I don't mind being, I don't mind. Right, exactly. If I don't have to read a story to a camera again, I'll be fine.
Or,
if I can do it in person, I'll be happy.
And I mean, that's like you adapt, but that it's not ideal. It's nice to be able to, hey, we can do that. Grammy can read a story via FaceTime to our daughter, and that's fantastic. But there's something about being in person or even reading that book to that child. I would have to imagine it's something that would be integral to your process as well. Can you talk about that, Jordan? Like what?
Yeah, I mean, so every one of my books up through, until I wrote these two memoirs, every book I've written has been inspired by some kid I knew who was going through some struggle. And you need to be with people in order to see what their struggles are, right? So like actually this fall, I was a middle school teacher in Phillipsburg for years and years before my writing career took off. And everyone thought that school visits would take off again this past fall. And then they didn't because the Delta variant happened and everyone wiped my calendar clean again. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go nuts if I'm in my house, sort of like what Gina said, So I happened to see that a friend of mine was taking us about a maternity leave in Phillipsburg High School. So I actually taught 10th grade English from August until January 30th. It was perfect, like a semester. I got to spend my days with 150 teenagers instead of sitting at home. And part of it was that you need to be around people and their stories. And it's sort of like at a school visit. It's what kids say before the bell rings to each other. It's what kids, write on the margins of their notebook that you see. It's
authentic stuff.
Yeah. And it's sort of, you have to be in the room where it happens in order to have like the incidental little stuff happen. And so, yeah, that was fantastic. And so shout out to anyone from Berk who's listening, because that's really, in a lot of ways my spiritual homeland. But
went undercover for not quite undercover for a semester, but just you'll see bits and pieces of them. That's amazing.
Did you wear your pirate hat?
I did bring my hook to school for something. I did all kinds of wacky stuff because that's just who I am as a teacher. But yeah, I was really, really sad that I was not in school for the Ides of March this week because we read Julius Caesar in the fall. And I would have had a freaking field day with the Ides of March. I did do the Ides of November, which, that was when we were reading it. But I really, really, very sad that I wasn't there for the Ides of March. I should have just run into my old classroom. And
that's when they killed his dog. It was like a practice run.
Yeah.
Horrible. I have to give a shout out to
go ahead.
I was just going to say that I don't have Gina's most recent book. She wrote a book on puberty. Hold that up and
oh, nice.
Show Gina on there. You go. Puberty is gross, but also really awesome. We cannot keep this book in the store. And this is an example of a book that every family needs to have because it's rock awesome. But the kids are afraid to look at it in front of the parents. But when the parents go away, they're like, can I have this? I'm like, yeah, put it on the counter.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to hijack the conversation, but really quickly, we watched that Red Panda movie that was on Disney Plus, and there are some people, because it deals with puberty and being 13 and going through that period of time, and our daughter's only 5. She gets she loves the imagery of it and all that, but we feel comfortable with it. It's an interesting thing, and you're finding more. I don't know, there's more of that. Gina, can you talk about that book a little bit? What?
Oh, sure.
And
yeah, so impetus of it was honestly a conversation with a former editor, basically saying because I had a background writing like humorous stuff, pitching humorous things to him. And I had been a fact checker with Men's Health magazine for a few years at that point. And we were talking about ways to combine those kinds of things. And we were saying like that a puberty book could use like really like a revamp. And especially like when I always talk about Mark Cuban, and when he always talks about how there's different kinds of inventions. There's people who create brand new things, and then there's people who reinvent the mousetrap. And I feel like this book is the reinventing the mousetrap, but like taking it in a way where it's so much more modern now. So the book itself is most puberty books will say this is the puberty book for boys and this is the puberty book for girls. And one very big defining characteristic with this book is that it's for everyone. And I don't say it's for girls and for boys, because even that's limiting terminology anymore. And so we say it's for everyone, and it's for and there's sections about like mental health. There's sections about sleep. A woman that I was in the store because I also was working part-time with Kirsten at the store, and a woman who was a children's education professor stopped by the store recently and said, like, when she saw the mental health section, she was like, I was so happy to see that, because you don't see that enough in these books, and kids are dealing so much with this right now. And there's a section on, I'm just finding the table of contents. There's a section on gender expression, gender identity, and sexual expression. And the whole book does it based on assigned sex at birth, so that every kid can feel included in the book. And so that, and I mean, it doesn't talk down to kids. It talks with them on their level, which I think is like the big thing that has been a reason why kids connect with it so much, is that they feel like, I mean, I make silly dad jokes in it, about like, there's the fallopian tube, not like Jimmy Fallon, not like the, and not like the, the Falcon, Millennium Falcon, things like that. And at the same time, really just use language that they'll understand and also appreciate and make them feel understood. Because my whole like mission as an author is to help kids feel less alone in the world. And like with this, I tried to do that with my fiction primarily, but when this book came around too, I was like, this is really an opportunity to do that as well. So
you did it.
Oh, thanks.
It's very not only topical, but also we talked about this before we came on about some of the news in other areas of the country where there have been kind of a crackdown on some of those books. Maybe somebody will look at that book and say, hey, if they're in Texas, they might not everybody in Texas, of course, but you know what I'm saying? How do you feel about that? I'm sure there as an author that has to rub you a certain way. Can you talk about anything in that respect?
Yeah, I haven't personally dealt with it yet. I kind of keep like waiting for the Google alert to show up for my puberty book.
For your book, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten its own version of it is that the most liked Amazon review of my book is, and I can get to it really quickly. It's unfortunate, but it's a 1-star review that talks about how gender is not a choice. And I jumped straight to the chapter about gender, and it talks about the choice to choose a gender or not. And I just remember the first time that popped up, I just thought, I specifically wrote this book for kids of like parents like yours, because they're obviously not going to get that resource in the house. And so thank goodness that they're going to have an opportunity to learn about it somewhere safe. And in the book, we talk about how sometimes parents and guardians aren't the safe person that you can talk to about it, that there are other adults of choice that you might be able to talk about it with, and how, like, I don't know. So for me, it's like, yeah, I don't know.
Is it just me, or you're like a little proud when you end up on those lists?
Yeah.
I would. I mean, you say there's that 1 star, right? But it, like every other review on there is like 4 or 5 stars. So it stands out that these people are saying, like, they're mad because it's telling something that maybe they don't want.
The
Well,
only people that put 1 stars on Amazon are people that never read the book in the first place.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
although
Go
this
ahead,
should cheer you up, Gina. I saw something a long time ago, but it stuck with me. The books that become huge breakout bestsellers aren't the books that have all 5-star reviews. They're books that have a mixture of 5-star reviews and 1-star reviews, because they're the ones that cause people to talk.
Yeah.
And so like the huge breakout books have the 1-star reviews. So I hope that, works for you, because that's
Hoping.
yeah. Right. Otherwise, there's someone in Texas drawing up a bill saying, if you know someone who's experiencing puberty, you can sue them.
Yeah.
Puberty and
My friend and co-author Sandra Mitchell, I wrote 2 books with her. She texted me and she said, I'm on that list twice.
oh wow.
That text,
Really?
there's and I wrote back. I said, that's not nearly enough. They must not
right?
they must not have read your other books. It'd be way more than 2. But I don't know. I was like, you should be proud. Like, if those people are unhappy with what you're doing something right. If those folks love you, then just question what you're doing, because they're not wise individuals. So,
Right.
and it's not just Texas. It happens around here all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I'm picking on Texas. I know there's a lot of incredibly awesome people in Texas.
Oh, of course. But
there
I
are
just
some laws.
but it is local. I just think, it's, I don't know if Kirsten wants us to get into it, but she's been like really brave about speaking out about issues to the community, and just to my ear, not even controversial topics regarding the anti-racist curricula and those types of things. And boy, did people react like you insulted them personally, and all just for standing up for things like equality and basic humanity. So Kirsten's been really like brave in stepping up to the mic, literally, and saying things that need to be said. You have been absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think it's kind of like, not to circle back to the book festival or anything.
We're good.
We had a little tagline that we didn't even work on as a marketing campaign or anything, but that everyone's a reader. And that's part of the challenge with the people that are banning books in the first place, and the vitriol that we feel that's probably from 2 years of being at home and all sorts of anxiety with each other, and that we don't even know how to communicate anymore. That having third spaces like the library or the bookstore, where you can just have a face-to-face with someone, because face-to-face, you're not going to scream and yell about Gina's book. You're going to look at it and go, oh, interesting. That's a penis. Am I allowed to say that? I don't know. Like that's great. And that's the kind of stuff that we have to be able to do.
If you read the Bible, there's some crazy stuff in there too.
Yeah, exactly. But it is part of the thing about, not turning people away, that even though there's a whole bunch of people that are now angry at our little store, those are the people that I actually kind of want to welcome into the store more than ever. And that's the only challenge that I personally have of, I don't know how to deal with that part, but fear is a real thing, I suppose.
Yeah, but I think it's too, and let's do circle back to the Lehigh Valley Book Festival itself, because we're getting people in person. And can you talk a little bit about that? What goes on? Like, if I was coming down with my child, and what can I expect? What goes on at the Lehigh Valley Book Festival for 2022? And I just schedule programs up here. So.
Okay, so
I just want to
Josh, go ahead.
It was interesting. Like, when we started playing this and we knew it was going to be in person, even that was still up in the air a little bit as recently as a couple months ago.
Omicron with this,
because we really had a, like Kirsten said, a sort of multi-venue, and we're gonna have people travel in and stuff. And then as recently as 8 weeks ago, we're like, I hope this happens. And we just so we scaled it all back, and we decided to have it all in one day, one location. But we do have like something for everyone in every space of the library. There's going to be like a sort of an expo outside with vendors and music, and then in the first floor is going to be a huge room for signing. That's going to be kind of like our pop-up bookstore for the day, our little Let's Play Books Bethlehem store in the first floor. And on the other side of that is going to be where we're going to be having a lot of our panels and our keynote addresses. We have 2 amazing keynote speakers bookending the festival. The opening keynote is Dorothy Wickenden, who's the executive editor of the New Yorker magazine, which is amazing. She's also written a number of interesting books, including this new one, The Agitators, I believe it's called. And then Erin Entrada Kelly, who is she's from Delaware. She's like from and she's kind of like a friend of mine. So
I love Erin. She's a friend too.
I harassed her into coming, and she won the Newbery Award, which, like, if you're a children's book person, is like the Oscars, times the Grammys. So,
gosh, I just have to say, you just buried the lead there. You were like, Erin Entrada Kelly, she's from Delaware.
Yeah.
And then, like, 5 minutes later, you're like, and she won the Newbery Award.
And she won the Newbery.
Yeah.
But Delaware, oh my God.
I never met anyone from Delaware.
Wait, do you mean Delaware?
I never
The actual state.
Coming this whole way?
I suspected it was fake. I never knew it was like a real place. That blew my mind. Delaware.
I'm glad you said that, Jordan. I'm like, oh. And there was this.
That's how you have to
Newbery one.
introduce her too. Hailing from Delaware.
Yeah, I am going to introduce her. She said instead of doing a speech, she's going to be in conversation with Josh Berk. So you get what you asked for. So I'm gonna talk about Delaware a lot. But yeah, Erin is fantastic. And so we have those two keynotes bookending. We have the outside. We have the bookstore. We have the other panels and stuff. And then Kirsten can talk a little bit more about what we have for kids, because the whole upstairs, which if you've been to the Bethlehem Area Public Library, is a beautiful children's center, and it has a lot of spaces up there too. And we're doing some really neat stuff for kids. And so I think Kirsten can probably explain that better than I can. But
Sure.
Yeah, I see Paul's name on here too. So
Yeah.
Paul's moderating, and Jordan's moderating, and Paul's on the panel too. So double duty.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of grabbed everybody that was willing to do stuff to do more. And I think when
that works.
it does work. And because originally we were only going to have one room for the day, because like Jordan said, Jordan said, and Josh, that in the fall, when we were kind of doing the heavy lifting for the planning, because these books, you work with the publishers to get on their radar, to get people on tour, except for when you know Erin, and then you just ask her to come. Thanks, Josh. But the rest of us have to like do the work to, behind the scenes. And then the Omicron variant came, and it was like, okay, now we just have to try to figure out how to get through December. And then all of a sudden, like January 8th, we're like, we're going to do this, right? Sure, we can do this. Next thing you know, we have 3 rooms that have programming pretty much all day. So basically, the thing is, you can come with any member of your family from age 0 to 110, and there will be something to do, somewhere to sit, something to listen to, something to dance to, all day long from 10 a.m. till 5. So,
and there's that organization called what are they called?
Princesses?
What are the princesses called? A storybook party?
Storybook Party, which is an event planning business here in the Lehigh Valley, who are amazing.
Oh yeah, I got them.
Oh yay, wonderful.
My daughter's in now. I'll show her this.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, because George has a person in the house who's the right demographic for this. It's like Disneyland. Like the characters, they're so good, and
so good.
Lose their minds. And it's really fun, and they also promote books, and we have a lot of, we're gonna have like the whole room is gonna be the little golden books room for the day.
Yep.
Yes. And we're gonna have superheroes and princesses and some surprises, and they do such a good job. That was one of our few big events we had before the lockdown. We had that Frozen event.
Oh yeah,
we had
I forgot about that.
That was right before. We had like 100 kids. Loved it. So yeah, if you have little ones, it's definitely something exciting. And if so
there's nothing that works better that combining, bringing literally a story to life for that ages 3 to 7. It's like gold, and they just get so excited, and all the ones that are coming are signing the little golden books, and Random House is supporting the effort. So it's going to be awesome. Just
speaking on my own is having a 5-year-old who, my wife, every single night, they read before they go to bed. We have a million different authors, a million different.
Good.
But one of Adam Rubin is one of ours. Dragons Love Tacos.
Sure.
We reached out to him. He's fantastic.
Aw.
But it's so fun that she's so invested in these stories as well, because we hear about how tablets are, awful. And no, it's a mix of these things, and it's kind of learning how they all coexist in our current, how we operate.
Moderation.
It's amazing to see how invested in it when she sees somebody reading, or she's in that environment. In fact, we went to I think it was pre-COVID, we went to a Bethlehem area public library event at Arts Quest at the Banana Factory that Josh played guitar at.
Right.
And my daughter was in the front row right before, and it was like, we can do this every week. So having events like this come back I can speak as a parent, is great as well, because we live in a community where you have to go to Disneyland every weekend. There's great events going on, in these locations that are improving and getting better as time goes on.
Like story time is definitely at least half for the parents. I mean, you got I had toddlers, and it's like you gotta get out of the house. So,
tell me about it. Well, I have a message. There's a comment here from Julia Brennan saying she's excited for Jordan's new book. So I feel like this is the perfect segue. Thank you, Julia.
Me too.
Thank you, Julia.
Let's start talking about what's coming up for each individual author as we wind down tonight, and then we'll close it off by reminding everybody about the upcoming festival. So, hey, Jordan, you're on the hot seat then. Can you plug yourself? Tell me what's coming up for you and how people can get more info.
Okay, so I have to tell you, I didn't know what it was going to be like writing a memoir, but I was trying to avoid writing about COVID. But what I found is it's so easy to write a memoir. I wish I had thought of this 13 books ago, because normally when you're writing a novel, I worry all night about what I'm going to write the next day, and I have to make it up, right? And when you write a memoir, you don't see it. You just write down everything that happened in order, and it happened. And
Wait, I got to bring you up on screen. Here we go. There we go.
So it was like I wrote this whole book, and then I finished, and I was like, okay, that's fourth grade. Then what happened next? And I'm like, oh yeah, fifth and sixth grade. That's what happened next. And so it's such a pleasure to write these, partly because the characters are people I really knew and loved, or in at least one case, knew and loathed. But the thrill of my friends from fourth grade, I made a Facebook group, and said what do you remember about field day in fourth grade? And my sixth grade friends, what do you remember about Jeremy Stein's birthday party in sixth grade and whatever? And people just had tons of memories, and it was so fun and so exciting to watch them come back to life. And I think part of being a writer is that you're a conduit for excitement. And if you can find that spark, that conduit, I was like, wow, this girl, Donna Benson, is still really psyched to talk about what happened in sixth grade. If I can capture some of that, then there's a little lightning in a bottle there. Because some of those themes are universal, even though the experiences are specific. So I'm really thrilled to get to talk about this stuff.
And that book to me reads like the best kind of novel. Jordan had an eventful life. So, I mean, his fourth grade year is made for the pages. I loved reading.
His fourth grade year is wild.
But it really was. I mean, it starts out with Evel Knievel type stuff where he's literally flying through the air on a homemade ramp. It was the 70s.
It was.
You got to listen to it on audio. If you haven't listened to that book on audio, do yourself a favor. I almost drove off the road.
No way.
So, and Jordan is the narrator of the audio book.
How about
I didn't know that, Jordan.
Wait, I'll say this. That was a wild COVID experience, and I'll let everyone else talk too. It was such a weird COVID experience. So I went in to do the audiobook narration for the first book. I've done both now. But I've never met my audiobook producer because it was during COVID. So he was just in my cans, right? He was in my headphones for 3 days. And so it was me and the engineer, and the producer was in his home in Connecticut. And it was the disembodied voice. I'd read a chapter and be like, how was it? And then it's this is God. You need to go back and read through that line. Because he was just this imaginary disembodied guy in my earphones. So that was a strange experience during COVID doing the audiobook.
Well, Paul,
I want to keep embarrassing Jordan for a minute. I've never done this before in my life. I went on a long ride. I missed several exits because I was laughing so hard. I got in the house and I picked up the phone and I'll never do this again. I just literally phoned Jordan. I was like, oh my God, what have you done? I don't even write fan letters. It just seems weird.
That was an awesome
better
moment.
endorsement. I'm very curious now.
It's a great book. It's a great
Thank
book.
you.
Well, Paul, since you just talked, can you plug yourself a little bit?
Sure. I guess what's going on right now is In Honor of Broken Things, which just came out this week. It's very exciting. As I've said to some people, it wasn't the book I meant to write. Just before the pandemic, I wrote this book. This is called Danny Constantino's First Date. I was sure this was my big breakout book. I love this book.
That book.
It's funny. It's all the things. I was like, I nailed it. And the 13 people who've read it really like it.
I read it. I love it.
It's a staff pick. We love this book.
I love that book. So my plan was to write another book that was sort of lively and fun and funny and just that tone. And of course, as the pandemic rolled across the world, it didn't seem like the world needed another middle grade romantic comedy. And so I ended up writing this book, which I'm told has some funny parts, which I'm happy about, but it's really about dealing with a broken world, which is what we've been in the last couple of years, and how you do that when you're a young person, especially, and you're not equipped. I don't think any of us are equipped for global pandemics or wars or loss or
No.
How do you deal with it? Because you can't not. We're here. So for me, that was an opportunity to think deeply about dealing. And so it just came out this week, and so far so good. So I get to talk about it for a few weeks and start new projects too. So.
Great. And Gina, we talked a little bit about your book, but is there anything else you want to say along with it?
Yeah, so I guess I get to be the slight bummer and say that I don't have any books coming out right now.
This is the one out right now. This is the exciting one. This is
It's
great.
out.
Yeah. This is the one that I'm promoting because last year, because my book, I mean, this was the big one for me that came out last year in the middle of the pandemic. And so, I mean, I was lucky enough to headline the festival last year with my friend Andrew, or AJ is his pen name, and we did an event together for Let's Play Books for the online book festival. Yeah, I mean, selling books can be hard, and so I am currently in the middle of trying to get the next one sold. I can say I also so my first series, which is called Diary of a Fifth Grade Outlaw, which is an epic book, which a lot of kids know because it's in a lot of elementary schools. So they have a series on Epic of short stories called Creepy Cafetorium. Yeah, thank you, Kirsten. I was gonna say they're all like the ones right here.
Sorry, Kirsten's got them all. She's got a lot.
Yeah. They have a short story series on there called Creepy Cafetorium that's kind of like the Twilight Zone, but funny and for kids. And I've been lucky enough to write a few short stories for them for that series. And so the first one just came out recently on the Epic app. And then the second one will be coming out. I'm not sure when. They're working on the illustrations now. And then there is a book version where they collected the short stories, the first one. And I'll be lucky enough to have 2 stories in that second book when the time comes. So
awesome.
Future stuff. But
well, it's fantastic that you guys are all, locally involved and doing all these fantastic things nationally. Now, I want to give you the last hard question before we end up here. If you're talking to a young author coming out like now, somebody who's maybe entering that world of thinking that they want to maybe possibly go down the road you're going down, and even from Kirsten and Josh's perspective, could you all just give a piece of advice? I'll start with Kirsten. I know I'm putting you on the spot, and I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I love this question because we get it all the time. A lot of people are self-published or trying to print their book or looking for an agent, etc. And our number one piece of feedback is assuming that you love writing and this is what you actually want to do, invest yourself in the industry. Learn about publishing. Don't just expect things to happen. but not these people. These people work. So,
What? God,
I mean, it's a I was gonna say it's a crazy time, but like, when has it not been? And it can be daunting to try to break in, but you know, there's always an opportunity for people to tell stories, and I think that, you know, as cheesy as it is, like, you have to just kind of write what you love and treat it like a gift that you made to give to others. It's ultimately a product that you're trying to sell, sure, but like, try to like approach it that way. Like, here's something the most, like, the greatest, funniest, most beautiful, saddest thing, whatever, that I could make, and I'd like to share it with someone.
right. And it's so vulnerable, but yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's very vulnerable.
Yeah.
And
Paul?
there.
Well, I'm sorry, Josh, you were done.
no, I was just gonna say, there's a lot of rejection, and that's something that is not easy for anyone at any stage of our careers. You still face it, and but you have to you just have to accept that that's part of it. There's no quick route. So
Paul?
Yeah, read what you love. I mean, then you have to start there by reading. You just sort of read what you love. And if you think you want to start making stories, I always tell people, like, if you really love my books, all you have to do is be better than me. And I don't set the bar that high. Like, when you look at some of these people in the area, like, find an author you love and then be better than that woman, that man, and good stories will lead you to success. And the other thing I always tell people is, he's not here with us to see, maybe he's watching, is read David Lubar. Today's David Lubar's birthday. Happy
David
birthday.
Lubar, he's been on my podcast.
That,
got him on. He's been in this room. Probably
David knows how to do this job. He is a craftsman and an artisan and an artist with a voice and
a mensch.
Yeah.
He's a mensch.
Yes.
And he lives in
you don't really know. We probably all have how-to books and we've taken writing classes, but the lessons on how to write, you can learn from reading good writing.
And did you know David Lubar also like helped develop one of the Simpsons games?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why like initially we had him on.
He's amazing.
Now that we're talking David Lubar, for his birthday, I want everyone to go read the book. Character driven.
Yeah, so you can learn how to
have this book.
Yeah, so you can learn how to write good stories by reading good stories. You just have to pay attention.
Great point.
I don't care if it's his birthday. He's had enough.
Happy birthday, David.
Gina, I'm asking you the same question. Advice.
Sure.
Authors,
so I'd say, like, the number one thing that I wish I had heard more when I was a kid is just like, anybody who dismisses you or tries to tell you that it's not possible, like, just ignore them, because we're all examples of people who probably had at least one person in their life. Like, I personally had family member who was like very important to me that was just like did not really believe that I would ever become an author, that believed that that was for like a top tier, select, very small group of people, and that it wasn't going to be me. And I mean, they've since come around, and especially since I proved them wrong, then they were kind of like, oh, okay, well,
I'm laughing there because it's so
yeah. I mean, it was like it was an honest thing where they were like, I am so glad you didn't follow my advice, which is a lucky and rare thing to have come around. But as a little kid in college, all through those years, it was definitely a hard thing to hear. And I just want to say, like, if you spend enough time doing it, if you do enough of the work, if you do enough reading, if you do enough writing, and if you keep reading books, like, for fun, but also read so that you can figure out what you think works and what doesn't work in a story, and use it as work time, really, too, and then apply what you learn from those books to your own writing, and just don't let rejection keep you down. Like, I don't know. There's been a lot on Twitter recently about people posting their getting to publishing story. And I've been reluctant to share it because mine's short and not like as much of the like it took a really long time thing. Like I kind of in the beginning of 2016, I mean, it's not true because I was writing a really, really, really long time and it took me a long time to get to children's books. But in 2016, I basically said like, I want to be an author. I'm going to do everything I can. And that year I wrote, I think at least like 4 books in the first 6 months. And then like met somebody later that year, wrote 2 more for them, couldn't get it quite the right thing. And then puberty ended up, while it was my last book published, it was my first book sold. And
that many large, like who writes one book? It took you that many books to write to get to that, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of perseverance is.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Like it's a small period of time, but I'm also a fast condensed writer. So I don't think it's a great example because some people, it takes even a couple years to write their first book, let alone. And so, yeah, just put the time in and just keep doing it and set it as your number one goal and you'll achieve it. Like it can take time, but that doesn't mean that it's not worth going after. And that it doesn't mean that just because people in your life tell you it's not possible, doesn't mean it isn't possible. So.
And Jordan, same question to finish this out.
Okay, so I always think about this in terms of the kids I meet on school visits, and I think about Julia Brennan, who's commented a couple of times and is an amazing employee of the Bethlehem Area Public Library now. I knew her when she was a kid, and she was this incredible book enthusiast. And I think about those kids and the responsibility we as authors have when we meet a kid who has that gleam in their eye, that they're a book lover. And these kids come up to you at school visits, and they'll say, like, how do you become an author? How do I, and I always tell them the number one thing you have to remember, okay, you have to read a ton. You have to write a ton. I used to write skits and short stories and poems and plays and songs and whatever you can, right? But the most important thing I always tell teenagers, specifically kids specifically, is your goal isn't to get famous when you're 13. Your goal is to get good now. And so for the young people who are listening, I feel like there's this tremendous pressure now in this TikTok world to get famous when you're 12. And when I was growing up, that wasn't the pressure. The pressure was like, get good now, unless you're S.E. Hinton, right? Everyone else, get good now, and then you'll be ready to write when you're, when the right story gets in front of you. And so that's my ultimate message, I think, to kids: read a ton, write a ton, and don't worry about getting famous now. Worry about getting good.
I think that's great. I mean, still do your TikToks. You never know. You might. It might be a better way to go.
No.
Guys, honestly, 100%. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to the Lehigh Valley Book Festival on March 26th, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Bethlehem Public Library. You can see the link there. I dropped it in the chat. So it'll also be in the show notes of this podcast episode. Go to letsplaybooks.com and you'll find it there. I want to make sure that we thank our partners that make us able to do these live streams and podcasts: Arts Quest, Molly's Irish Grill and Sports Pub, and of course, Michael Bernardin with Remax Realty. You can get in touch with me. You can email me directly at george@lehighvalleywithlovemedia.com. If you would like to sponsor or get in touch with us and do one of these, this is a lot of fun. I want to thank all of you. Thank you guys so much. This was great. This is one of my most favorite streams ever. There's a lot of great information, and it's an honor, honestly, to meet with you who are doing so many of these things locally. I mean, obviously nationally, and people all over the world can read your books, but it's an honor, the fact that you're going to be here and able for your fans and people to meet. And thank you to Kirsten and Josh for allowing this to happen and getting it together. You say you're going to say something. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that the festival is 100% free for everyone.
Well, that's
really important. Yeah. No tickets, just come on, enjoy.
Books, but you should still shop at Let's Play Books.
Well, of course, buy a book while you're there.
You can buy a book while you're there. We would love for people to buy books.
And get a library card.
Yeah.
100%.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much, honestly. And sit tight. We're going to stop the live stream. Sit tight. And thank you, everybody who watched tonight. We had a lot of fun comments in here. We appreciate you watching these streams and communicating with us and engaging. It makes us want to do more. So we're looking forward to being on site and live for the book festival as well. Thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic evening.
Have a good night.
Bye. Bye.